Hello! Welcome to the first of three wrap ups that I'm gonna do for my Reading 12 Books in 12 Weeks Reading Challenge. So, in case you don't know, I'm trying to do this reading challenge where I'm trying to read 12 books in the last 12 weeks of the year. When I started this challenge, I was just one book away from completing my reading goal of the year, which was 36 books. And I started this hoping to boost the number of books that I read in the year. And I wanted to be like a little bit more mindful about the pace at which I'm consuming books, and yeah, just to boost the number of books that I'm reading. So a part of this challenge was that I need to sit down and talk about all the books that I've read, because I don't want to just mindlessly read these books. I actually want to mindfully consume them and interact with them, maybe annotate them if possible. I have not been able to do that yet, but it is very much still on the table. So as a part of this challenge, I'm going to do three sort of wrap ups. Every time I finish four books or I get through 4 weeks in this challenge, I'm going to sit down and talk to you about them. So let's start with the first book that I read for this challenge, which was Book Lovers by Emily Henry. Now, I have talked about a bunch of these books in a lot of detail in my October wrap up video. However, I'm still gonna give you an overview and how it was like binging them. So, Book Lovers by Emily Henry is this rivals to lovers sort of romance book. It's about a literary agent and this editor, and it's also about the bond between two sisters. The thing that I enjoy the most about Emily Henry is that the way that she writes feels a lot like I if like the romance and the literary fiction genre had a baby. This is probably what that book would be. And by this I mean most of her writing or anything that I've read so far. In a lot of romance books, my gripe with it is that everything is surface level and the focus is on the tension and the romance, and more often than not, like nowadays, we've got a lot of the focus being on the spice. But with Emily Henry, it's not like that. Her characters seem very fleshed out. They have motivations for what they're doing, for the way that they're behaving. You understand them, you relate to them, and overall, I really enjoyed reading this. At first, I thought it would be a challenge to finish this book in a week, but then I was staying up all night this one particular night and I just binged it. I started this book at I had already started this book, but I started reading that night around 11 p.m. and by 3 a.m. I was done. So it was really, really cool that I was able to do this. Like, even when I started this challenge, I had my doubts, and I'm not gonna lie, I still sometimes have my doubts, but I seem to be doing okay. Next up, I read Lalan Sweets, which is a book about a sweet shop that is run by Lalaji, who is our main character Tara's grandfather. He decides that his sweet shop will be earned, not just inherited, not just passed along. So Tara and her two cousins compete against each other, and Tara is joined by her neighbor Nikhil, and they go on this like quest slash self discovery journey, which takes them through all these Indian cities, and they meet a lot of different people. We've got a varied cast. We've got a lot of experiences that are pretty common in India. Like, this was a very comforting book for me because I could relate to a lot of those things that happen inside this book. The narrative voice was a little different from what I am used to, but once I got accustomed to it, it was much, much easier for me to follow along. Um, I really enjoyed reading this book. Even though this book is set in the time when my mom was probably my age, it still feels like this book still carries a lot of those things that are uniquely Indian and that are still experiences that you can have today, or at least remember having while we were growing up. So it feels very relatable, it feels very personal. And I read this around Diwali because that's like, I can't have a book on Diwali maybe on my shelves, but I did have a book about a sweet shop, and what is more Diwali gore than that. So this is Lalan Sweets, which was the second book I read. So technically, I finished it on like the Wednesday of the week My weeks are from Wednesdays to Tuesdays, but I was a day or two late in finishing this book. However, I'm gonna give myself a pass on this because one, Diwali, festivities, two, I'm trying to do this to encourage myself to read more and not to punish myself. So if there's like any of those hard ass people who are like rules are rules and you failed this challenge and now you must start over people here, I'm not gonna do that and you can't make me. So next, I read The Nature of Witches by Rachel Griffin. I have already talked about this book. I've already talked about the way I really enjoyed the way the witches were structured. Okay, so let me back up. In this book, we have witches whose powers are directly related with seasons, and every season has its witch, but there are only 4 seasons. Now, I really love the way that the 4 seasons are divided up from. I really love the way that the 4 seasons are divided from equinox to solstice, which tied it up really nicely. And this book is based in America, so we've got the climate and the weather that is relevant to America. So I couldn't relate with it that much. It didn't make sense about the seasons where, okay, the heat wave in winter is a dead ringer for climate change. I get that, but your tornado and your storms in random seasons maybe were not that relatable to me. This is one of those books where it is a young adult book that is suitable for young adult audiences because as a grown up I didn't really relate that much to it. There were still some themes that I related to and understood and actually are similar to what I am going through in life. However, it still didn't hit the way that this book would have hit if I had read this a decade or so ago. So, solid book. I did enjoy the author's second book more, which I had read before this one. If you like owning pretty books, this is gorgeous. And this is a travesty, the fact that the cover doesn't give any of this away. Like, they could have made it witchier and darker and, you know, but anyway, I think this was like a solid 3 star or so for me. And now I'm going to talk about the book that I haven't actually talked about in my October wrap up video, which is Vengeful by V.E. Schwab. So, by when I say I haven't talked about this book, I mean I hadn't finished this book and didn't really have much to say because I definitely mentioned that I started reading this book, but I hadn't completed by the time I was shooting that video. So, Vengeful by V.E. Schwab is, first of all, this was a challenge for me to read because this book is 600 freaking pages long. And I definitely challenged myself with this one, not gonna lie. I had to sit down on Sunday and just force myself to get through 400 pages. And even that I couldn't do. I could not binge 400 pages. I was only able to get up until 300 pages and I got so exhausted that I couldn't focus on the book anymore. That was my trying to force myself to read it in a time frame experience. However, this book is cool, it's fun. It's got a lot of new characters and a lot of moving pieces, which is why it makes sense that this book is so long. And I found out recently that we're actually gonna have another book in this series. So, like, we had Wishes, which started with these two college roommates who, a decade later, both have superpowers and both want to kill each other. And one of them has just been released from prison. So now they're both out for blood. In this book, we follow the same two characters where we left them at the end of the first book. And I'm not going to talk about it because I don't want to give any spoilers, but I can mention the new characters that we have. First, we have June, a shapeshifter with something in her past that she is not telling us. And she befriends Sydney, who is one of the characters in the first book. Sydney was 12 when we met her in Wishes, and she is now 17. She has the power to bring people back from the dead. And that's super cool and also super morbid. And the other new character in this book, like one of the main characters in this book, is Marcella Riggins, who is a mob wife. Like, Girly was a mob wife before mob wife was an aesthetic. She has her own brush with death, which gives her superpowers, and now she wants power. She is no longer content with being the mob wife. Now she wants to be the mob boss. And you know what? I support women's rights, but you got it. I support women's wrongs. So we've got Marcella, we've got June, we've got Victor and Eli, our original characters. It's like watching a bunch of pieces on a chessboard, but it's more like 4D chess. It's not normal chess. There are so many things at play, there are so many pieces at play. We've got a whole organization that is now hunting people with superpowers, or extraordinaries as they're called, so that they are also closing in. And all of the characters in the story that I mentioned up till now all have superpowers. So they've all got one common organization chasing them down, but they've also all got different kinds of interactions with each other, and it's all going to come to a head. And one of the things that I found very different but also really nice in these books, both of these books, is the way that V.E. Schwab has structured them is through flashbacks. And like it leads up to, like, for example, if all the things that are going down in this book are going to go down on a particular night, so it's gonna say that night or last night, but up until that point, leading up to that, we've got flashbacks to 4 weeks ago, 4 years ago, 3 years ago, 2 years ago, and they're not always in sequence. So it is pretty cool that you jump to each little section right when you need that information or when you need to know. It's pretty cool. The way that the pieces all come together, like it's done in a way that is not even difficult to follow. It's really cool. Like I remember when the first season of The Witcher came out, which that entire show was out of sequence, and you had to keep putting it together while you watched, but I could not keep pace with it for the life of me until someone made a whole chart and I followed that chart. But with this, you don't have that problem. You get the exact amount of information and the exact sequence and the exact everything at the exact time that you need it, in a way that you're able to process it, and that is wonderful. And I also found out that V. Schwab has completed the first draft of Victorious, so I don't know what's gonna happen. I hope Victor and Eli kiss before they kill each other. Yeah, that is it. I mean, they've been trying to kill each other for 2 books. I think it's time that they try kissing each other. Maybe that'll do something. I really wish that I had read Vicious and Vengeful earlier. I really wanted to, honestly, but the first books that I read by her were the ADSOM trilogy, and the last book in that series is like 700 pages long, and the last 200 pages of that book are still stained with my tears. I got traumatized. I was terrified of starting this because I had this perception for some reason that her series will leave me devastated, and I was just having a fun time. This was honestly just a fun time. I was just watching all these characters do their thing and having a fun little time. So these have been the 4 books that I've read as part of this challenge so far. And I'm not gonna plan all these books, but I can still tell you the book that I've picked for week 5 of this challenge, which is The Sun and the Star. Now, this is Thursday as of shooting this, and I've only read like 8 pages of this book. Yesterday, I haven't been able to get time because I was at the hospital most of the time getting tests and stuff, and I still have to go for more tests and stuff. But I'm gonna read this. I really want to read The Court of the Dead, which is the second book in this series. This is The Sun and the Star by Rick Riordan and Mark Oshiro. This is a book that follows the story of Nico D'Angelo and Will Solis from the Apollo cabin. They are both characters from the original Percy Jackson series, the one that came out in the early 2000s, I believe. I read it in 2010 when the movie had come out, I think. But apparently these books have been out for a very long time. I grew up reading Percy Jackson. Like, if you have someone to thank for me sitting here rambling about books, or if you have someone to blame, this guy right here, Rick Riordan. That's him. He's responsible for everything. He's responsible for me wanting to be a writer, for every single thing that I write. He's responsible for my unmatched love of fiction and fantasy books, specifically for my love of adventure. And he is completely and utterly responsible for this wish that I've had, that I have a best friend that I grow up with, and then we fall in love when we're older, or maybe we had just always been in love and we were just too young to know what it was. That ship has sailed, not gonna lie. But for everything else, I'm pretty grateful. Right. Coming back on track, The Sun and the Star follows Nico D'Angelo and his adventures with his boyfriend Will Solis after the event of the Trials of Apollo series. So, okay, I can talk about this for hours. I'm going to try to shrink it down as much as I can. We have the original 5 Percy Jackson books. We have the Heroes of Olympus series, which is also a 5-book series. And I'm not talking about the Demigod Files or any of those books, okay? Um, and then we have the Trials of Apollo series, and I'm also ignoring the Kane Chronicles and the Magnus series here. I'm talking about books that Percy strictly has been in, or where even Nico has been in these books, I think. I'm not so sure if he was in the Trials of Apollo, but he must have been, because Will was in the Trials of Apollo and he is Apollo's son. Anyway, original Percy Jackson books, Heroes of Olympus series, Trials of Apollo, 15 books, and then we have this. We also do have a new Percy Jackson like revival series, like a second series with just Percy and the original gang. I do think that that book and this Nico D'Angelo book are definitely being written because there's a show being made. But hey man, if you have to churn out more books, even if they are lower stakes, or even if they are cozier than the original series, just to get your show on the air, it's fine. I'm gonna watch the show, I'm gonna read the books. This guy was my childhood. These books were my childhood. They shaped me in a lot of ways. And yeah. Oh, also on the Nico theme, skeletons. Because Nico D'Angelo is the son of Hades. He's the god of the underworld and the dead. So that is the book that I'm going to be picking next. If I'm able to finish this by Tuesday, like if I actually take the whole week to read this book, then I'm going to be starting The Court of the Dead, which is the newest book in this series. This is going to be a reread because I read this book way back in 2023. And since the second book came out, I wanted to jump right in, but then I realized that I don't exactly remember what happened in here. So I'm gonna need a refresher, and that is what this challenge is for this week. So as always, thank you for watching. If you're still watching, damn. Like damn. Most people I know don't make it through me talking about books. So damn. Yeah, that was this video. I am working on November TBR, but after reading 8 books in October, I'm kind of just in the mood to chill. Maybe read just the 1 or 2 books, or like however many weeks we have in November, number of books, and be done with it. But I might just change my mind. You never know. So for now, this is me signing off, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.